Hello, welcome friends. Welcome to another edition of Horn of Africa TV Conversations. With me, as always, is my good friend and comrade, Professor Mohammed Hassan. How are you today, Mohammed?
I'm okay, Comrade Elias. Belgium is very cold now. We have the last 2 days a lot of snow, but I'm okay.
Wish we could send you some sun from California here.
I wish. I miss it. The light is okay. There is a lot of light, but very cold.
I see. Is the lockdown easing up a little bit or still strict lockdown?
Still lockdown.
Okay. So there is somehow the lockdown blues, as they say. Yeah?
Indeed. As you see my hair, I couldn't put the hairdresser. It is locked. So we will wait. Maybe by the end of this month, they will try to open the
barber shops and restaurants. Yes.
We hope.
Let's hope for the best. Well, it's another week, and as promised, we have come back to carry out our regular conversations. Today, I would like us to start off with the strange, bizarre statement issued by the U.S. Embassy in Asmara. What do you make of it? It was issued on its Facebook page on February 4th. Today is Wednesday, February 10th, so about 6 days ago, a week ago almost. Have you seen it? What do you make of it?
I have seen it. First of all, you could say I was surprised at the level of the understanding of the Eritrean of the American embassy in Asmara, and I don't understand how is the chargé d'affaires as understanding Eritrea and understanding the region. Before you publish such kind of flagrant statement, he could have consulted with Eritrean authorities. If he have any kind of concern, because he's accusing Eritrea in two cases, which he doesn't have any facts on the ground. One, he's telling that it is to the Eritreans and the international community that the Eritrean troops are involved in the war in Tigray. Why?
In fact, it demands that Eritrea withdraw from Tigray.
Yes.
Is Tigray an independent country? Are we aware that it has become a sovereign country?
No, it is not. It is first of all is an intervention on the Ethiopian internal affair. Secondly, it is his statement. He is accredited to Eritrea. Is he have the knowledge that Eritrean troops have invaded Ethiopia while Ethiopia have never claimed that? I think it is a mockery of diplomacy, a bit childish, I could say. It doesn't help the embassy and the embassy staff to work with their counterpart. They are accredited to Eritrea with Eritrean administration. I consider it is a provocation. It's a provocation of the lowest, the cheapest type. It also breaks the Vienna Convention.
Yes.
The American embassy in Eritrea and the chargé d'affaires, he's living in another world, or he wants to confuse things, or he satisfies his so-called the new Obama interventionist group within the White House or State Department. We have to look on this statement very seriously. In the sense is It is an arrogant, Eurocentrist understanding of diplomacy. He doesn't know that the world have changed, and he doesn't know also deeply that it is the Horn of Africa have changed. So I feel very ashamed for the American embassy in Asmara to release such kind of trash propaganda documents. I'm sure they will be summoned in Eritrea, and they have to do a lot of explanation. This shows the level of understanding of the region, the level of understanding of Eritrea, and so on. And the previous colleague of him, the woman, now she became an ambassador of the United States in Uganda. Slowly what she has built, he just shattered it on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If I was responsible leader or responsible State Department man, I could have dismissed this affair because he's not helping neither for the U.S. The foreign relation with the region, nor also, I think he's in service of very small clique, and time will explain. Time will. Secondly, he's not. Is he ruling Ethiopia? Ethiopia is a sovereign nation. He is intervening in the internal affair of Ethiopia. Did Ethiopia complain to him that there is Eritrean intervention in Ethiopia? Is there any statement from Ethiopian government claiming that Eritrean troops had invaded Ethiopia? This is
very strange indeed. In fact, we in our Horn of Africa TV editorial today, we had highlighted these contradictions upon contradictions within this very brief statement. Another thing was that the statement accused Eritrean forces of committing atrocities, all kinds of abuses that they claimed in that statement. They have credible reports. And then in the second sentence, it says, we call on independent investigations to verify this. So if you have not conducted independent investigations, how can you then make the charge, make the accusation? Why not wait for independent investigations first, verify, and then let the chips fall where they may? Don't you think so?
Yes, because these individuals, first of all, they have no respect and understanding for African nations. This Eurocentric and arrogant attitude which were inculcated, they don't know that the world have changed seriously and the Horn of Africa have changed seriously. If this man is really concerned about this issue, and their staff, they are concerned. In fact, I blame the Shagidi affair, and I accuse him as he is responsible for this statement. He have easily phoned his counterpart, the ambassador of United States to Addis Ababa.
Recently appointed.
Yes, recently appointed. She could have briefed him, and he could have wrote her and explained his concern that it is whether he's hearing rumors or not, and he could have jointly that it is, he could come for whatever statement, he could have consulted her. He didn't consult his colleague in the country he is concerned with this. He didn't consult also the land or the country which is he's accredited. He could have went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, met the minister himself. He could have said on the table, asking that this is credible information I have. But at the same time, in the statement, he says he have credible information, and then he is asking also for investigation. So you could see it's a propaganda, just accusation, and it is the cheapest level. Maybe he thought that it is like 2009, that the U.S. administration, when they checked a report of their own and their fantasies that Eritrean troops and Eritrea is sending weapons to the Al-Shabaab.
Invaded Somalia,
which is later on and became is a lie and so on, and they have put in sanctions on the
utterly bogus charges fabricated.
Indeed, and they make Eritrea to be quarantined and so on, and they couldn't. Of course, the purpose was to weaken Eritrea, but this resolution of the American embassy, it shows that it is the anger they have, and they personalized it to the extent that it is the steadfastness of Eritrean people and Eritrean government, and finally the ethno-fascist regime, which they have supported for a very long time, it collapsed in front of them like ice cream and melted down. Mm-hmm. And then they hoped that it is these gangs, when they ran away to Tigray, and then they will mobilize, because they were told that they were very strong, they have a strong army, and so on, they have weaponry, and this, they could fight 3 wars, and so on and so on. So their fantasy, which I call it Alice in Wonderland, the fantasy they have entertained, finally they have attacked the Ethiopian troops, which is stationed for 22 years there, killed and maimed and so on. And finally, the Ethiopian army have defeated them in 2 weeks' time, and they disappeared. And some of the leadership, they were liquidated and decimated by Ethiopian troops. All this, they couldn't digest it. So it is a problem of a hangover they have. And it is a hangover of drunkenness. They had continued 27 years with the ethno-fascist regime, and they couldn't swallow the reality. We, the people of Horn of Africa, we should not be frightened. Whatever they do is that the major factor which they used to play on the ground is that factor have disappeared. And there is no way they can regroup them and arm them and create a problem to the region. So in fact, they are shooting on the air, and it is good that they are exposing themselves. This will be a lesson to the people of the Horn of Africa in order to see the level of these people and these individuals in the so-called big embassies sheltered there with a swimming pool and a golf field and so on. These are just charlatan, primitive, Middle Ages individuals who doesn't understand the game of the modern diplomacy. This is what I could say. And it is a shame.
Imperialistic hubris, maybe?
Indeed, because this imperialist, Eurocentric, their view and their vision toward the Africans is that they want to humiliate Africans and so on. That time is over. It's colonialism, direct colonialism is gone. Neo-colonialism, it didn't succeed in Eritrea, and now it's have left Ethiopia itself. Their agent is dead totally, and he is not, in fact, the person who wrote that document, he must be from the Middle Ages, and he doesn't know what's happening in the world today. This is the way I see it, but what we have to do, this supporter of ethno-fascist regime in the past, they know that they were defeated, but they developed a personal vendetta against Eritrea because they couldn't understand little Eritrea could resist all this pressure. And finally, she prevailed the winner. Her vision and the steadfastness of Eritrean people, it proved that it is legality is won, justice won, the people of Ethiopia won, and so on, and their agent is removed as the cancer of the region. And now most of the people of the whole of Africa, whether it's in Somalia, even Kenya, they used to go in the intelligence service of the ethno-fascist Tigrayan state, and attacking people, kidnapping from Kenyan cities and villages, killing and eliminating. What they did in Somalia, invaded Somalia, killed more than 16,000 Somalis. The genocide which is committed in the Somali region, which is a lot of reports, and even American human rights organizations have wrote about it. Genocide in Gambela, the genocide they have committed in Amhara region, and so on. So this man who wrote, or women, or a man or woman, I don't know, who wrote this kind of statement, I think they are not living in the region, and they have no knowledge of what happened in the last 27 years through these ethno-fascists who have committed a big crime. And secondly, he should have consulted his counterpart. This is
it's rather contradictory also, because if you remember back in November of last year, November 17 actually, as the TPLF was launching rocket attacks on Asmara and Gondar and Bahir Dar in Ethiopia, the American Secretary of State at that time, Mike Pompeo, issued a statement praising Eritrea for the restraint it has shown for not being provoked. And he chastised or he condemned the TPLF's attempt to internationalize or to widen the conflict to involve the whole region. So don't they read facts? This happened 2-3 months ago. Eritrea's restraint was duly noted by the State Department of that time. Also, the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Tibor Naj, at that time echoed the same sentiments as Mike Pompeo. But now they're making all kinds of wild accusations, and strangely also, or perhaps predictably, we should say, the European Union followed suit and issued more or less similar accusatory statement against Eritrea, while it is sending a fact-finding mission to verify the situation in Tigray to Ethiopia. So shouldn't they have waited until their fact-finding mission came with credible reports instead of hastily accusing Eritrea? What's going on here?
I think first is psychological. These individuals, they don't behave as a statesman, and they are representing the state, which accredited them to these countries. They really believed that they have the Bible and the Quran of the world. And they hoped and they worked very hard that it is their major concept was from Clinton to Obama was a regime change in Eritrea, what they call rollback. Everything, all the character of intimidation and infiltration, everything, the technique they used to use everywhere, whether it is in Eritrea, Cuba, and all other countries, they used that. But they didn't succeed to put Eritrea down. Eritrea, a small country with a small population, but it proved it is stronger than them. The population remained in solidarity with their own government. The government remained in its old line and its old concept of the new Horn of Africa. Self-reliance, don't kneel down against all others, they call it, the Eritrean way. This frustrated them, and this frustration brought more anger. It became more personal. It is an ideological war they are doing. They couldn't even win among the Eritrean population a huge segment which can use it as what they call the yellow or the rose revolution. It's fair. So we have to see it from this. These individuals from Sudan Rice and until the Chargé d'Affaires and all this, they have developed a vendetta against Eritrea. How Eritreans and how Eritrean government, they can dare to challenge us all this time for almost 22 years in active sabotage and active diplomacy of regime change. So it became part of their personality. They sleep with a dream that Eritrea will be defeated. They sleep and the hate they have also accumulated through their own propaganda against Comrade President Isaias Afwerki. What surprised them is, and if they were very, very clever, whether they are European Union, the European Union, these are individuals with a middle-aged mentality, and the State Department in the United States, they couldn't read what is happening in the region. And it happened to be in 2017 when me and two Oromo comrades, we visited Eritrea. And we made an interview with His Excellency Comrade President Isaias Afwerki. He said, TPLF Wayane game over. They never understood the philosophical concept that the president of Eritrea, when he put that. That was 2017.
That's exactly 4 years ago, next March, right?
But they were not aware. These are individuals who are roaming from one hotel to another hotel, from one reception to other. In fact, really, as a person, you will not like to have a friendship with these people, drunkards, and a little bit hooligans. No, they really behaved like football hooligans. They believe that it is their team will win, and in no way other team will win with the same game they were playing. So they got more frustrated, and they developed a vendetta, personal vendetta. So this statement from Asmara, you see, is a statement of a personal vendetta. It is not a behavior of any government and state who have a bilateral relation and have a diplomatic relation to squander their own image in front of the people of Eritrea. It is, in fact, it's a trash. And it is good that it is quickly, they have thrown their mask and so on. They are not smart enough to even to play the game. Secondly, as an Ethiopian, I'm an Ethiopian. And we never accused Eritrea that had intervened in this country. On the contrary, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia have made a very big speech to the Parliament of Ethiopia, the support the Eritrean people and the Eritrean government did for the Ethiopian National Army when it was attacked and killed by the ethno-fascist TPLF. He explained it to 110 million people in the television. Today, majority of Ethiopian people know that. So they are lying for whom? To harm whom? The understanding of Ethiopian people toward Eritrea and the Eritrean people is totally fundamentally changed. If you see to the YouTube, Eritreans had stood with us in a bad time when we were attacked from within, which the army which have defended Ethiopia, which have helped the people of Tigray in all fields and so on. So to put such kind of statement, it shows
nonsense.
The level of their consciousness is very, very backward, and arrogancy added to it. And it's good that they exposed themselves, and we have to make our people inside and outside aware that they might come with a lot of other agendas from now on to create a division. But one thing we tell them very clearly, the people of Horn of Africa are united now. They are smarter than them. They know the propaganda. This false and primitive propaganda, it doesn't work anymore. So they better adjust their propaganda, and they better think twice before they utter and open their dirty mouth toward us. This is what I will advise them.
Yeah. Also, in this regard, the office of the Ethiopian Attorney General had come out with an extensive dossier. They gave a press briefing of that last week. They said in that press briefing that the textile factory of the TPLF called Almeda Jarka Jark was producing army uniforms of the Eritrean Defense Forces and the Ethiopian National Defense Forces for the purpose of dressing up their own militias and also some of the criminals that they released from jail. This is not reflected in the Western media. They barely talk about this. But why would this TPLF textile factory produce Eritrean army uniforms? They never ask these questions.
I think it is the last 22 years they have painted the TPLF and the TPLF's regime in Ethiopia as the most successful model in Africa. With the logic of Clinton of the anchor state, and later on that Ethiopia have double-digit growth economy, Ethiopia will be very soon middle-income economy. All this false propaganda was written from the New York Times, Washington Post, until all media, CNN, and this and this and this, all of them, they became alliance. The reality on the ground was different. And I think it is a guilty consciousness burns them. All their lies was exposed. The reality in Ethiopia was a hell. And the people of Ethiopia, they were living in a hell situation. It's no fascist regime killed, maimed, robbed, embezzled of Ethiopian wealth and so on. And of course, it paid, as the Attorney General office in its first press conference, in their statement, they say they knew even senators in the American parliament that they were bought and they were in the payroll of TPLF, journalists and so on. All this money of taxpayer money of the poor Ethiopian people, it was paid for them, and they were getting money from that regime, which is
to buy influence, yeah?
No, not only that. Legally, I'm sure that it is once these documents are released, these senators and these journalists and so-called professors and so on, they never paid even a tax to the American people or European or for Europe. That was a black money was given to them. And these are criminal elements. And this criminal element, they want to continue their business to get a free money out of tax and so on, where they can keep money and pay. But this is the game they have done always. They can.
There is the case also. Recently, there was a report in a European media outlet that highlighted the case of the Greek ambassador Alex Rondos, who was for almost 10 years the European Union's ambassador at large on Horn of Africa matters. Now he's been a lobbyist in Brussels, furiously lobbying for the TPLF defunct regime. What can you make of this?
That is a small Greek who were appointed as an
expert, yeah,
ambassador of European Union, and then he have tested what the Arabs calls the halawa. TPLF studied it, and so this little Greek that he's hungry, and as usual it is the concept of the Balakan. The word the Balakan means is an individual who lies and who cheats, and so it's a negative, pejorative word. So it proved that what the Eurocentric Europeans, Germans, and British, and so on, look at them before, and they even gave them a name, the Balkan mentality. This man, he's just is a baklava merchant who have no any integrity of himself, and using public money of European taxpayers and so on. We should expose him. We should expose him in Greek. We should explain to our comrades in Greek, and so on. We should write also in Greek journals. I will make sure that it is the Greek Communist Party about this man, Comrade Elias, if you send me his full name and so on, and I will talk.
Yeah, we will put a link of that article in the description section.
Good, very good. We should expose them in their own market. They think that it is, we are not able. No, we are able. We have friends, we have comrades everywhere. We are internationalists. We don't invade anybody, but we also wanted to protect our region, the Horn of Africa. And that is also, it's our right. And 27 years of this ethnic regime, ethno-fascist regime of Tigray, of TPLF, we have suffered on it. And we will not allow any charlatan now to come and to play in our children's future and so on. We, the people of Horn of Africa, we have to stand fast and to say a cut, and we have to fight them in their own market and go even to their areas and in their countries, accuse them. The second thing is, I'm thinking now to promote, and to my comrades, I talked to I didn't go with him in details, progressive international lawyers, and I will talk to the Secretary General by next week and so on. If it is possible, we organize a delegation to go. These are specialists in criminal law, and they can support the Attorney General office with all the documents and so on. I hope the Attorney General office in Addis Ababa will translate most of the documents as soon as possible and create a secretariat of translation, that these documents, we have to expose them. It's not only such kind of people. They are also charlatan journalists. To give you an illustration, the campaign is 3 types of campaign. As I have last time I mentioned, one man, which he was a worker, he had been a postman. Later on, he wanted to study. Finally, as a comrade, I helped him personally. In Tigray, he did a very good thesis and so on. He did a PhD on that and so on. And then later
this is a Belgian fellow?
A Belgian professor. And this man, he organized 3,000 professors, a petition in support of the ethno-fascist group in Tigray. But it melted down because the people who signed, they have no knowledge of Tigray. So what we have to do, we, the Horn of Africa, and people in the Horn of Africa television, we have to lobby also. We have to explain to these people who didn't know anything about that region. They don't know, and they were busy with their work. We should knock their doors and say, look, you are signing a document. Imagine you signed that to liberate the Nazis. Then they are, and so on. We have to explain, give the document, and so on. A lot of them, I think, they don't know anything about the TPLF. They don't know anything about our region. We have to do our public diplomacy. We have to do our public information to reach them as much as possible, because most of them, they are kept in the dark, and their, of course, image building about ourselves was negative, and they promoted this fascist organization which have led Ethiopia. As, of course, it is their best friend, and from there. Secondly, we have to understand 2 things. Dominating Ethiopia with their friend, you also dominate the African Union. Because Addis Ababa, it's exactly like Washington, like Brussels. It is an international capital of diplomacy. Because of the African Union is there, that most of countries in the world, they have also their own embassies in that country. So in that sense, it is an international capital as any other New York or Washington or Geneva or whatever it is. So that if you have a puppet which you use as you want for intervention, for whatever you want, and then through them you control the other African countries and African Union. You intimidate other Africans in one center in Addis Ababa. That situation is gone now. Not only Ethiopia was liberated from this ethno-fascist, also the African Union in Addis Ababa is liberated by the change which has occurred. And
the new Horn of Africa vision of peace and cooperation.
Yes, and this makes them very angry. So they cannot play their dirty role which they have played for the last 60 years in that continent. And this makes them very angry, frustrated. So we have to understand, these are themselves, they are fascists. They didn't care if we kill each other. They didn't vote what happened to us. They don't care about us. When they speak about human rights, they mean that their intervention right. It's not the human right of the Africans. It's not the human right of the Ethiopians. No, they don't care. When they speak about refugees, and the refugees have nothing decent on, it is a process of intervention. They created the
Yes. In fact, if you examine all the charges and accusations, they're building up towards what is known as quote-unquote humanitarian intervention, or R2P, the responsibility to protect. This is just a cover-up for military intervention, as happened in many parts of the world, in Libya and elsewhere. So I agree with you. We have to expose these lies and expose these steps for intervention, this so-called humanitarian intervention, which is not humanitarian at all. It is just imperialistic intervention to loot and plunder resources of African countries or global South countries.
Not only that, after the demise of the Cold War, the first person who coined the word humanitarian intervention is Kushner. And he calls it the fifth democracy. We, the democrat countries, which is, he means, we, the civilized white European, America, Canada, and Australia, we have the right to win.
Remind our audience who Kushner is.
Kushner, he was one-time minister, and he created what they call first Medicine Sans Frontières. Later on, he created an organization, an NGO called Doctors Without Borders.
Yes. An French foreign minister.
Yeah. So he created, and it became even a theory in the universities, that it is humanitarian intervention, the fifth democracy. We, the democrat countries, we don't have only obligation to defend the democracy, but to promote human rights. Human rights intervention, it is our duty. It is part of our culture, political culture. And he calls it the fifth democracy.
And this was also echoed, I think, by Zbigniew Brzezinski of the United States so in their international crisis group, the Grand Chessboard, and what have you.
Indeed. But it is the first intervention, humanitarian intervention. They gave it a logo called Operation Good Hope of Somalia, the first one. So with such kind of logos, by creating, mobilizing the population here, going into the pocket of the population, use humanitarian sentiment, and so on, a very beautiful discussion and discourse and so on. And so in this way, they have intervened everywhere. But now understood that the humanitarian...
Well, the invasion of Iraq in 2003 was to bring freedom and democracy to the people of Iraq, right?
Indeed. This is a humanitarian intervention. That it is, these people are savages, they are killing each other. We, the civilized, we have to intervene. But they let 3 million Iraqi women today, they are widows with children. They destroyed a vibrant society totally, and they brought them into the Middle Ages. This is the same what they did in Syria. The same with in Libya, and so on and so on.
One disaster after the other, massive slaughter, millions die.
Indeed.
Bombing of depleted uranium bombs, for example, has health consequences that last for generations, brings cancers on all kinds of genetic deformities and what have you. I mean, it's abominable, but the term itself, humanitarian intervention, it sounds nice, right? I mean, humanitarian, we're intervening because to restore human rights, democracy, freedom. It's a very sinister and very dangerous than the overt military intervention and war of previous eras.
Indeed, in the beginning, after the Berlin Conference and the colonization of Africa and so on, the first fifth column or the first hand of imperialism were the missionaries, whether it is Catholic missionaries or Protestant missionaries and so on. And they call it exporting civilization.
There is that famous quote from Jomo Kenyatta in his book, you remember, Facing Mass Kenya, where he says, when the white man first came to Africa, you had the Bible in your hand and we had the land. Then you preached to us to bring Christianity, you converted us and asked us to close our eyes, bow our head down and pray. So when we finished the prayer and opened our eyes, he says, we found out that we had the Bible in our hands and you had our land in your hands.
He was right. So after the independence, first was the missionaries. And these missionaries, they used to raise in the parish money from the believers in the imperialist countries. These believers are simple workers who have a humanitarian sentiment, who believe in their religion, and it is that it is you have to help your fellow human being and so on. So this priest and all these missionary, they used that humanitarian sentiment by using the parish as the center of collecting money. A very long time. Mm-hmm. They abused and misused the European humanitarian sentiment. As anybody, human sentiment, they used it. But once Africa got independent, the struggle came and so on, because in the real sense, they were discredited by African people, as President Jomo Kenyatta said. So all of them, they ran and they came to the headquarters and they changed now. Now, this logo doesn't work anymore because it is discredited. So to replace...
So a new slogan had to be found.
A new slogan, a new organization must come. And that is why NGOs came. So we will discuss in one of our programs on the history of missionary and NGO that most of our young people to understand. So now,
excellent point.
Yes, it is now an orchestrated campaign, you see. Let us take Eritrea as an example. When you go to any NGO, we'll tell you Eritrea is North Korea of Africa. If you are not sophisticated enough and to read from their own mouths what they mean, they can confuse you. When they say Eritrea is North Korea of Africa means we are not allowed to go into Eritrea. That's why Eritrea is North Korea. They put the logo on Eritrea. You see, these are charlatan individuals of the petty bourgeoisie and these, flower power group who believe that they have the right to bring civilization. The new missionaries. New missionaries, they don't preach Bible. They might have a tie, then and so on. They can, and what is their Bible? Human rights and so on. Development, which is development. On the contrary, it is they are an agent of the imperialist forces, collect information from the villages where they are, and so on. So Eritrea, it said no, Kafa, we don't need you. We will do it alone. We can work. we have we are human beings like you, and we can build our country. That is very dangerous statement. So Eritrea will always be accused, not today, not tomorrow, and so on. Eritrea for them is a rotten apple. It will contaminate all the region with her idea of self-reliance. Self-reliance. Why Africans have to have self-reliance? Africans are supposed to be exploited. Africans have no history. Africans are not able. All this. This is the same what they did to the Chinese and so on. There is no people who suffer among by imperialism and Western missionaries as like the Chinese, and they have killed 100 million Chinese. And today the Chinese is in a totally different situation. They don't want the Horn of Africa to develop. They don't want the people of Horn of Africa to be united. So they will always find element of backwardness from our society. They use this element in order to put a stone in our shoes, not to walk as one man and one woman. But that situation is changing, and we will struggle, and we want our region to be free, and we want the cooperation of all the countries and the people of the region. How is possible that it is somebody is trying to inculcate me, being from the region, and they are telling me that Eritrea is North Korea of Africa? It's none of his business to become North Korea or become North Borea. It is none of their business. We have the right of self-determination to decide our fate. That is what they cannot digest.
Indeed. In the few minutes remaining, Professor Mohammed, I would like to bring to the attention of our viewers this strange interview of the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, in which the interview was done with H.R. McMaster, so we'll have to explain the context. But there he talks about the situation in Ethiopia, and then let us take a clip, just watch a few minutes of that video, and then we will come and talk about what he's talking about.
All of these problems have, I guess, there's certain unique drivers of the conflict. But yes, while we have you, and while our viewers and listeners have the opportunity to hear your perspective, could you just give us your thoughts on conflicts a little bit beyond the Great Lakes region, especially the one that's ongoing in Ethiopia, centered on Tigray, as well as other places where you have Rwandan troops deployed, such as South Sudan and in the Central African Republic?
So before I come to that, let me touch on what you alluded. You mentioned something about Uganda. Let me.
Yeah, the 2019 agreement. Yeah, yes.
Yes. Right. So we have. You see, the problems between Rwanda and Uganda again have been there also for quite some time. Only that this time, what we had, and we hope will help us resolve the matter, is that we brought it to surface. We started discussing it publicly and openly. Otherwise, things were happening, without necessarily people knowing what the matter is. So, but with Angola and DRC, and then Uganda and ourselves, Rwanda, we sat and brought out these issues that have been affecting our relationship. And in that arrangement, we have had a series of discussions to address now again what we brought out as the root causes. We hope that may deliver good results at some point. That's where we are, but those problems have been there for a long time. I will not go into more details because I'm just on one side, and I don't want to prejudice anyone's understanding of what the issue is, but that one we are managing. Now, we have had troops serving under and both the military and the police serving under the UN in many parts of the world. It has been Sudan, South Sudan, one time we were in Haiti, then Central African Republic, where we are now. And in fact, as we serve under the UN, we are just not peacekeepers there being told, do this, do that, don't do that. We also bring a bit of experience from our own country during the tragic days, where we can share with the people how to resolve some of the causes of the conflict as they exist. We make an effort to try and understand them in those countries where we serve, and also use our availability under the UN to tell them stories about our own situation and how possibly they could benefit from addressing their problems in certain ways, whether it was in Darfur, in Sudan, then or in South Sudan, and wherever we are deployed. We work with the communities, with the citizens, and even the governments. Through the UN, we tell the UN, if we could do the things like this as a UN contingent or force in any part of the world, we could help bring peace, not just to sit there and wait until peace happens and then we keep it, because that's why some forces have stayed for too long in one place. They are waiting to keep peace that never actually happens. So can we contribute to actually making peace happen? Right. That is what we bring in that contribution. Now,
I'll just say also that goes with your theme of you have to address the political drivers of the conflict, right? Or else you're just treating the symptoms. I think that is exactly the right approach. Absolutely,
we do that. Then for Ethiopian situation, I haven't known of AU or UN or individual countries trying to help in dealing with the matter. It is still just within the country itself of Ethiopia. But of course, it is a very serious situation. It is worrying to everyone who gets to know and hear from what is happening there. It's absolutely worrying. So at some point, there have to be steps to try and address that issue. And if it could start from within the country itself, so much the better. But I think the toll is just getting too high as we see it. In fact, the other problem is that it has been cut off from the rest of the world. Right. People don't even know much about what is happening there in reality, other than the misery and things we see when people have crossed the borders and run into Sudan, or a few people who have been working there with the difficulty saying what they have seen and heard. It's absolutely worrying, and I hope the United States new administration or the UN or others should be thinking of what we can do together with Africa. Africa needs to be engaged primarily, but it's not as easy to say Africa is going to do this with this, and it's very difficult. But something needs to happen to prevent that, because by the time maybe 1 year or 2 or 3 elapse, we shall find that the toll has been extremely high.
I agree. I mean, you have to address these situations early, or as you know, they always get worse and larger in scale.
Okay, so you have seen this strange interview of Paul Kagame. What do you make of it? Who is the interviewer, by the way? HR McMaster. General McMaster, I should say.
A general who was once appointed by Trump administration, but he was also removed. He himself, he says that can you imagine a general for security advisor of United States appointed by the president? He forged and lied to the president on the number of American troops in Syria. That's why the president discovered, removed him from the post. In fact, he should have put him in also in trial. This man, he is from the group neo-interventionist. He disagreed with the idea of President Trump when he says that he will remove and reduce American troops in 4 places. In 3 places first. The 4th I will explain. This neo-liberal internationalist of robbers, they panicked. They didn't like that. He wanted to reduce American troops from Afghanistan. They didn't like. They have to make a lot of maneuver. So this will weaken American strategy, will weaken our friends, whatever they have said. But Trump continued. Then after a while, Trump, he continued also his negotiation with the Taliban in Qatari capital, Doha, bringing Taliban with Afghan government. There were elements in the United States and elements of the Pentagon generals in Afghanistan and so on. They didn't appreciate that because they were looting American taxpayers' money, and some of them probably they are involved in the drug business, which always American army since Vietnam.
Opium, that's right.
Opium and so on. So
heroin.
They didn't appreciate that. But they couldn't do anything. Trump continued.